Kia's journey towards electrification starts with the all-new EV6. This is their first purpose-built electric vehicle launched by Kia here in the Philippines. With 21 charging stations around the country, it's time we check how a typical owner will drive their EV6 towards the heart of the traffic here in Manila. So we've just taken off from Seda Hotel in BGC, one of the 21 locations where Ayala Land has actually put up their EV chargers. Now, for Ayala, they figured that the typical EV6 buyer would commute around 50 kilometers in one day. That would mean they will be using this all-electric vehicle to and from work. So it's like home to work and back again. If you think about it, with the EV6's 528 kilometer maximum range, that would mean about more than a week without even requiring to top up the charge. But of course, you can charge it up at most, if not all, of the EV charging stations that's currently available in Metro Manila and select locations around Luzon. A bit of a caveat, guys. When Kia Philippines allowed us to drive the EV6, this is not the Philippine-spec yet. We're talking about 99% accuracy, but there are a bit of changes here and there, they tell us. So first of all, what do you get? Well, that is confirmed that Kia Philippines is introducing the EV6 in the GT line trim. That would mean a rear-wheel drive configuration with the biggest possible battery. That's around 77 kilowatt hour. With that in mind, you could get 520 kilometers on a single charge, and it's powered by a single motor, single gearbox, which makes 229 horsepower and 350 Newton meters of torque. The quoted 0 to 100 kilometer figure is around 7.3 seconds, which is actually not bad, and the top speed is 180 kilometers per hour. But what's more important is, of course, the serenity that an EV driving experience can give you. Compared to a combustion engine, EVs are innately quiet because there is no drivetrain sound. In fact, we are now sitting in traffic and the car is not making any sound. Another thing about the EV6 is that it's underpinned by Kia's first purpose-built platform for EVs, called the EGMP. It actually means that the batteries are placed low to the ground. This gives it a very good center of gravity, and above all, the batteries actually form an integral part of the chassis, which means it contributes to the improved structural rigidity of the EV6. Now, of course, there's going to be some concern of how like an EV drives. Does it drive like a spaceship? Does it drive like a different vehicle? Well, thankfully, it doesn't. With the exception of the lack of an engine sound, which is typical of an EV, it behaves and drives like a regular car. So all the major controls are where you'd find them. Granted that the EV6 interior looks futuristic with these dual screens and touch controls and all that, but believe me, the steering wheel still behaves the same way, the suspension still behaves the same way, and because this is a rear-wheel drive vehicle, if your senses are actually attuned to it, you will actually be able to feel that the vehicle is actually pushing the car rather than pulling it. One of the barriers towards the adoption of EV, granted, would be the lack of charging infrastructure and the so-called range anxiety. But there is going to be some sort of reprogramming that needs to be required when you're going to buy one of these things. Just like you don't go out of your house with a half-charged cell phone or half-charged laptop, it's the same thing when you're going to be buying an EV. The point here is that you don't go to a gas station to fill up. You actually fill up the EV when you're at home. So when you get to the house and then you're gonna stay in for the night, or when you get to the office, if your office provides an EV charger, you just plug it in. Now, depending on the sort of EV charger that's available to you, the EV6 charging can take somewhere between as little as 8 hours to as much as 16. But it's still not so bad because how long do you usually stay at home to rest for the night? That's about it, 8 hours. How long does it take for you to do your job at the office? About 8 hours. Once you get used to it, the beauty here is that you will never need to go to a gas station ever again in your life. When it comes to maintenance, it's the same thing. And EVs would actually have less moving parts compared to their internal combustion counterparts. With that in mind, the sort of maintenance that you can expect would be like once every year. And even then, the cost of maintenance is going to be very low. You're talking about things like tire rotation, checking of the brake pads, and that sort of thing. But oil changes, those things will be thing of the past when owning an EV. Another thing about owning EVs is that you actually get a lot of non-monetary benefits. As of now, the final or more detailed IRR of the electric vehicle or the CREVI Act is still being finalized, but you can actually get things like priority registration with the LTO, the possibility of being exempt from the number coding scheme, and also a couple of malls have come up with free fast charging stations and dedicated parking for EVs. So with those combined, going for an electric vehicle, especially as your day-to-day commuting car, would make a lot of sense. Going for an EV6 at about 4 million pesos, thereabouts, doesn't make much financial sense. Well, I think that's where you're wrong. Aside from the benefits of, for example, not ever going to a gasoline station, and also things like cheaper registration, priority registration, and stuff like that, you do get an EV that's emotional. Now, you normally don't think EVs and emotional to come in the same sentence, but in this case, I think Kia has knocked it off the ballpark. When it comes to design, the EV6 comes with their opposites united design language. Now, the tiger nose grille is still there. That's always been the Kia trademark. But the combination of curves and angles, which would normally don't go together, they made it work with the EV6. When it comes to the interior, it's all about this lounge-like atmosphere with lots of space given its exterior size, and of course the high-tech looking and high-tech executed cabin. You also get very sustainable choice of materials with its vegan leather, and also a lot of these recycled PET plastics right here. So for those who actually care about the sustainability of their vehicles, not just from a charging perspective or propulsion perspective, but also from the entire vehicle production perspective, well, the EV6 has you covered. I think it's fair to say at this point that for people who think that EVs aren't perfect for Metro Manila, well, you have to think again. With 528 kilometers of range on a single charge, the EV6 can easily do Manila's more or less 50-kilometer daily commute. Now, with that in mind, the Kia EV6 is now available for orders at every Kia dealership nationwide.